Welcome to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Andrew Bartolotta. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making an impact, empowering the good in our community. And today we are chatting with Anika Jackson, an awe-inspiring woman who wears many hats. She's a mother, community volunteer, philanthropist, strategic communications professional, podcast host, and graduate adjunct professor at USC, who currently serves as the VP of Operations at Full Capacity Marketing, a full-service agency committed to enhancing workforce development in educational institutions. Anika, thank you so much for joining us today.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Of course. Now, first off, talk about your journey in marketing and PR and what's led you to where you are today.
I'll try to make it short. So I grew up in Kansas, from Lawrence, Kansas, go Jayhawks, originally. And I have a lot of family members who are entrepreneurs, and I have a lot of family who are educators and also social workers. So I was always around different issues and topics. And I always also loved bringing people together around an issue or a cause or something fun. Could be, could just be even a DJ. And so that led me into my first marketing foray, which was I was asked to start promoting DJs in Kansas City, Missouri, because I was always going to their performances. I probably shouldn't say this, but I had a fake ID that said I was over 18 because I didn't want to drink. I just wanted to go listen to good music. The laws were, a little different then. I got asked to start promoting DJs, and I was like, this is great. And then I started throwing my own events and promoting club nights and figuring out how else I could bring people together. So this is the early days of like the rave scene and dance music. I had a little zine. We would do little dinner parties. We would figure out road trips to go to other states, to their clubs or their, DJ performances. And so that's where I really cut my teeth. It was a very organic experience. Then I had the opportunity to move to Chicago, where I started working for KBA marketing. And even though I didn't smoke cigarettes, I promoted Camel in nightlife promotions back when people were still smoking in bars. So I'm aging myself here, but so I worked on Smirnoff, Audi, and Camel. And so I got to see a little bit of the agency side and experiential marketing opportunities. I also still worked in the club world. That took me to Los Angeles, where I did a lot of the same things, worked in Hollywood, promoting clubs, worked for KBA marketing, and then also got a job working at a magazine publisher called Ray Gun. And they had a couple of magazines that were very arts and music oriented, was Ray Gun. And then Bikini was a magazine that was kind of like Details, but more West Coast centric. And that's where I really learned the ins and outs. Like I did everything from being the receptionist to accounting, subscription, circulation, marketing. And that took me into a whole other side of marketing, where now I was communicating things to consumers, but also working with the advertisers on what their messaging would be, what kind of events they would want to, would be the right events for them to engage with. And so if they did an advertising spend of XYZ, and then they would get X amount of events. And so then I would do that whole process. Then I moved to San Francisco and launched a magazine called Revolution, which was a dance music magazine. So I got to build on the skills that I'd learned organically and the connections I'd made in these different cities to be the launch marketing manager. And we did a 6-week summer tour, with DJs on tour buses. Then I launched an official Xbox magazine when Xbox first came out. Then I moved into my own firm and PR and marketing and experiential. And I've done a few other things since then. And it's all taken me back to the world of PR marketing, which is something I really love. And it's really about impact, right? And I think that's where I went to school for public administration because I couldn't decide if I wanted to go into business and marketing or into social work. So I did public administration. I really haven't had to use the degree, but that's what took me to today, and really working with entrepreneurs, nonprofits, workforce development, education for work. And then on the side, doing a lot of philanthropy and getting really involved in how I can make a personal difference and get other people to help make a difference in the world.
What a fun career that you've had so far. Like so many different industries and like very fun industries, and the timing that you were involved in those are so fun. Like I'm sure you have plenty of stories that probably are appropriate for the radio, but very cool. And you, because of this extensive career, I'm sure you've seen marketing and PR really evolve, obviously with technology advancements and really just the experiential side of public relations and the way that people have utilized technology for PR events and such. How have you seen marketing and PR evolve, or what are some of the things that you've really enjoyed seeing people really take hold of?
Oh, I love that question. Well, when I was working on the magazines, these were very early days of the internet. So when I was looking for ways to promote the music magazine, for instance, the way I could do that was going into AOL music chat rooms, because the internet, as we know, it did not exist. So I always joke, like, that was the early days of influencer marketing, because I had this whole street team called Revolutionaries. And I literally would go into these chat rooms, say, hey, do you like dance music? You want to promote a new magazine? I'll send you swag every month. And I'd send record bags and CDs and copies of the magazine and flyers and stickers and just fun stuff. And so I feel like everything old is new again, right? Like, the concepts are the same, the principles are the same, but the techniques we use, the tactics and strategies have evolved. So now you see influencer marketing is huge. And it's really taking that, what used to be just third-party validation, you telling your friends that you love a product in person and then having them go buy it, and that's moved just to the internet. So it's a different way of using the same techniques. Everything's integrated now. So before, like, I never would have thought I could go into PR before, because marketing was one aspect, sales was one aspect, PR was something different, advertising, so everything was so siloed. Like, they had to communicate a little bit, but you didn't have the integration that we have to do now, where you say, okay, you have a great PR story that just went out. How do you share that on social media? How do you make sure now it has to be on your website? So, right, it's on your earned media. Now you're sharing it on your socials. You put it on your own channels, like in your newsletter, on your website, and your blog. And then if it's something really cool, you can use advertising dollars to promote it. So you have to look at everything like that now. So I think, although there are a lot of people who are still specialists, if you have the skills and you kind of understand the whole ecosystem, it's going to help you go a lot further, especially if you're a small business or entrepreneur. And also when you're looking at, like, I've had times when I couldn't get a job because I dabbled in too many things, right? But then that helped me get into the C-suite and become a VP at companies, because they know that, okay, yes, we do a lot of different things in our business, and I know enough about each of them to be able to manage the process.
I love that you're really talking about this and the importance of having multiple tools in your toolbox to be able to say, yes, I am a PR expert, but I also know my way around marketing, experiential events and stuff like that. Because for so long, myself as well, I was afraid that being a jack of all trades would make me a master of none, because
Right.
I would not be able to really find my niche in the work that I'm doing. And now, as an entrepreneur, a small business owner, working with the C-suite as well, a lot of synergy there, that there are more opportunities for people like us, because we were able to dabble and be curious and critical thinkers in different aspects of the way, and being able to say, yeah, I'll learn about that. And now we're producing podcasts and the work that you do. So that's a very important aspect of it. What are some of the key lessons that you've learned from your entrepreneurial journey as well? Maybe some pitfalls you face, and how did you overcome them?
Wow. Thank you for asking. One pitfall that I've gotten into, and I've seen a lot of other people, is trying to grow too fast. You start getting a lot of clients. If you're a marketing agency or whatever your business is, then you're like, oh my gosh, I need to hire more people. But then you're not thinking about the other expenses that come with hiring people, especially if you have to hire them as employees. And it's not just about the salary. It's like 25% more that goes to the taxes and everything else. Another thing is, I hired friends sometimes who had experience in things, but then turned out, because of whatever is going on in their lives, or my business was different than what they'd worked on before, I didn't necessarily hire the right people at the right time or have that expert panel. Now I really believe in the power of, you know what, I'm not going to hire a friend to do that. They're perfectly lovely, but I really need to make sure I have the right person who, I mean, I got into a situation where I found out later that somebody wasn't turning in all the paperwork and I had employees in different states. I'm still dealing with that years later because I thought I finally figured out how to unravel most of it, but then I'm still getting like one state that thinks I have employees. I'm like, I had one employee there for like 6 months. They shouldn't be sending me things or trying to get money out of me, but I still have to figure out how to deal with it on top of everything else going on in my life, right? I also really believe in mentors and finding the right mentors and not being afraid to ask people to mentor you. And because I feel like now there's so much overwhelm. Like everybody has a program and their program is the best. Well, their program worked for them, but it might not work for everybody else. So like as a small business, I often get like shiny object syndrome, right? Like, oh, that program, that's how I need to do my lead gen, or that's, I need to use that sales funnel or whatever it is. And it might not work for you. So just take a step back, make sure you have the right people in place to be your advisors. And like now I have a great accountant who's like, no, you cannot hire people as employees until you have X amount of money in the bank and you need to take these steps. Like, I wish I would have thought that because I have a tendency just to be like super excited and just want to get into it. The other thing I really like is coaches. I have 2 or 3 right now that I work with, not all the time, but there are people I know I can call and they all give me they all help feed different parts of my soul and my business, right? So like one yesterday, we worked through an issue and she really broke it down and helped me reframe how I was thinking about things. And also we figured out like, here's the action plan for me to get this thing done and really figure out how to goal set. And I was like, okay, now it feels achievable. I can actually get that done. Where before I'd be like, I know I need to pitch this client. I need to write this proposal. I need to finish this for my podcast. I need to grade papers. I'm a single mom, like, trying to fit everything in. So I would say find mentors. If you don't have them, there are a lot of people willing to be mentors. You just have to ask. Surround yourself with coaches. You don't have to hire the cheapest. You don't have to hire the $10,000 coach, right? You can find the in between. And there are a lot of people out there also who are trying to get more coaching hours in for their certifications who will do it for free. And you can find those people. You just have to do a little search, right? And then don't hire friends just because you think you want to work with them. Hire the people who are really like the right people for those jobs.
On social media, entrepreneurship is shown as this really cool, fancy way to make a ton of money, and it may not be super stressful, and you can make that 6-figure income, and there you go. And there's so much more that goes into it. So being transparent and honest about that is really great. And what I love too about you is you're a podcast host, and not only a podcast host, like you're having tens of thousands of listeners a month. You're the founder of your Brand Amplified. What motivated you to start this podcast, and how has it evolved since you started it?
Oh my gosh. Well, when I lived in Houston, I had a radio show. This is going back a few years. It was a radio show for Real Beauty, Real Women. I was one of the hosts, and we did similar to what you do, right? We talked to people who were doing really good things in the community, and we wanted to propel goodness, whether it was community activism, issue-based, a nonprofit event. We would bring people on to talk about their businesses. And we also made it into a Facebook Live show. So it'd be on the radio and Facebook at the same time. Then I moved and the pandemic hit and things changed and had to evolve. I actually had a client who asked me to host a podcast for them. And I loved it. And I still would love to host that podcast, but it wasn't their main business. They just didn't really have a lot of time or financial, things to put into it. And I was going, wait, I'm putting all the time into it. I'm not really getting paid for that time. I'm just putting money into the production and I'm getting all the guests. And then I had another client who asked me to host their podcast, and I found the same thing. I'm like, what am I doing here? And so a couple of people said, why don't you just start your own podcast? You've done this before. You love speaking to people. You love meeting people. That's why I'm in marketing, right? and PR. So I said, okay. So I started it. I didn't take it too seriously at first. And then I was like, wait, this is something cool for me. It's selfishly, I get to meet really great people every time I do an episode. Selfishly, I learn something new or get something reinforced that message that I needed to hear right then. And so it just built up to the point where I started having too much content. not that you can have too much content, but I had so much that I had to go, okay, let me reposition this a little bit. So now I was doing 1 episode, I went to 3 episodes. December, I released an episode every weekday because that's how much I had stored. And I didn't want people to be waiting longer, right? So so now I do 2 episodes a week is my release schedule. And so what's evolved is taking it more seriously, being, really just honing in on the audience. I've gotten better at asking the questions and all of that with time. And then it's also really helped build up SEO. I don't think people realize how important it is. The other thing is I've been listening to a lot of PR, like major PR people, big agencies, big brands talk about how they're now incorporating podcasting into their strategies more, starting their own podcasts, trying to get their executives on podcasts, because this is the new media. This is evergreen content. People will always be able to watch it or listen to it or read the blog about it. You can repurpose it across your social, on your website, and all the different channels, so many ways. And again, it's a really great way to make those connections. Now I have hundreds of people that I didn't know before from all over the world who I can say, oh, you know what? That's somebody I need to call right now because I have a project I want to do with them. Or, ooh, I need a guest speaker for one of the classes I teach. They would be perfect. Or somebody comes to me, I might not be the right person to help you, but I know 5 people that you could talk to. So it's expanded the world so much, and it's expanded my appreciation of the world and the work that we do.
Podcasting really is this medium that transcends a lot of what we can do with marketing and the way that we can repurpose this content. It is fantastic. And I love that you've really touched on so many different ways that you can repurpose that content. You also are a really big proponent for philanthropy and women-owned businesses and women entrepreneurs. You are a board member for Influencers. Could you tell us a little bit more about this initiative and your role with it?
Yeah. So Influencers Foundation actually came out of 2 things. One was I spoke at a tech startup conference and met this guy, Ajay Yadav, and he was one of the people talking about startups. I was presenting on marketing for go-to-market strategies for startups and branding and PR and all that stuff. So we met, we had a conversation. He's like, you really need to meet my wife. You guys would get along really well, and you have a lot of similarities. So she had started the Influencers Foundation, and it's women of color and allies. And her projects, one of the projects is in Kenya. And so she works with kids and women to help them learn digital skills, because you can hire people from anywhere. And if you know how to do digital, then that is job security.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, I know it sometimes helps to hire people overseas because you're really making an impact on them and it's also saving money over what we'd have to pay someone in the US. Not to say I don't love working, and I have a huge team in the US as well, but I think it's really good. And it shows just that globalization. And I'm a child of an immigrant mom. My mom came from Thailand. I work in different countries. The other connection point with Influencers, so we're starting basically a membership. It's going to be in a whole bunch of different cities. And it's a way for women to come together to learn. They're all amazing entrepreneurs in their own rights. I think every woman I've met so far who's part of the group is an entrepreneur, has their own business or multiple business ventures, and they also have really big hearts. And so it's really about looking at what are some of the issues, because we want to focus on the US and also globally, right? So we're planning on taking trips to Kenya, and then we're also going to go to Ghana, which is where I have a foundation that I started called Learn, Grow, Lead, which we initially focused on children's education. And then we realized kids, okay, so it costs $40 or to $125 or $200 to send a kid to school for the whole year there. The education is free, but you have to buy books, uniforms, all the other things, right? And a lot of kids can't afford that in that country. And so, so we sent all these kids to school, and then we realized, wait, some of them don't have a place to live. They don't have a safe living situation. And so to help break the poverty cycle, we built an orphanage, and now we have organic farming as well. And we lease the land, but we're about to do a fundraising campaign to buy the acreage. So that way in 2 years, there will be self-sufficiency for our partner in Ghana, because that's what everybody wants, right? Nobody wants to get a handout all the time. They don't want to come back and ask us for money because, expenses have risen. Kids are not going to have food in 5 days unless we can fundraise for that. And everything I do, primarily it's all We're small volunteer teams. We don't get paid. Every dime that goes in goes straight to helping these causes, right? So Influencers Foundation, we are planning some really fun things, primarily in the Los Angeles area right now, but also looking at, we have some people in Dallas and some other Houston and some other markets. So I would love to expand to your cities and your area. So if anybody hears this and is interested, let me know. But yeah, so we're doing lots of events to get people together around causes, and then we're picking out, we're basically pooling money from the membership fees to then send it to these projects. And then we'll go visit them and do workshops with the women and children in the other countries so that we're not just giving money, right? We're giving our time, and we're really able to see the impact we're making.
That is life-changing and fantastic. And kudos to y'all to really understand that poverty is so many factors. There's so many factors when it comes into poverty, especially global poverty. Yes, educating the children is super important, but if they don't have a safe place to go home to then wake up and go to school again, like there's a barrier there. There's a barrier for food. There's a barrier, so many different global barriers that also, happen on our soil in the US as well. So being able to really understand that and really make an impact in those multiple ways is life-changing for so many. That's fantastic. And you mentioned that you are a single parent. You're also a conscious parent as well. What advice can you give on raising conscious children in our very complex society?
I was just having this conversation with my daughter last night. She is a freshman in high school. She already knows what she wants to do for work. She wants to get her PhD in neuroscience and study brain anomalies. And she's on this track. And we talked a little bit about that because, when I've been in situations where when I was married to her father, I could donate tens of thousands and sometimes $100,000 a year to charity. I have been in situations where I've been on food stamps and had to start completely over and not known, had a roof over my head, but not known how I was going to maneuver in the world, right? And she's seen both sides of that. So one thing I've always tried to instill from an early age is, and when I lived in Houston, we did a lot of family philanthropy stuff there with volunteering, because I think every kid can start volunteering, but every kid is not going to want to do the same thing that their parents are doing or what the other kids around them. Some kids might be more interested in animals. Some people might be more interested in elderly and going to senior centers and talking to seniors. Some might want to know more about homelessness and how they can, or kids who are hungry and what they can do there. So there are so many issues out there. I think it's really important to talk about them with your kids. And when you see a homeless person at a street corner, don't just, you don't have to give them money. Like we used to create blessing bags with things that we knew homeless people needed. And so we'd have those in the car. So anytime we stopped at a corner, we could hand one out and they'd have water, some change, fresh socks, some toiletries, things like that. And whatever else we could fit, some easy to eat food. But let your kids ask questions and don't just brush them off. So when you see that, like that person, my daughter would ask, like, why is that guy at the street corner holding a sign? And why do I mostly see men? So then I would have to talk about safety for homeless women. So it can lead you down these rabbit holes of other issues, but our children are going to be the ones who help solve these issues. So if they don't have an understanding of them and they don't have an understanding of the privilege that they have by being able to go to good schools, having a roof over their head, having parents who are involved in their lives, food on their table, getting to do whatever activities, travel, wherever. If they don't have I don't want to swear, but I always say, we don't want them to be little A's, right? We want to raise kids who are conscious and who understand they have privilege, and they need to understand, how can they help other people? Because we are a global society, and it is important to know what's going on in other parts of the world because it will affect what happens here.
Well, my life motto, which I feel like you really embody, is we'll be known by the problems we solve. And so for you to really be this conscious parent, but also to lead your children and being able to be conscious kids and later on adults, and understand the importance of asking questions, being exposed to diversity and inclusion, and how it not only allows you to understand your privilege, but be able to learn from so many different diverse backgrounds and learn how you can be a part of their story and helping them be productive citizens. Like, that's huge and that's great. What puts a smile on your face when you look at the work that you've been able to do as a mother, a marketer, a difference maker in your community?
Cool. Well, I think there's always a feeling that there's so much more to do. So, but I appreciate, I guess, being able to make an impact in my own small way and make a difference in my own way. And sometimes it doesn't look like what you think it's going to look like, and that's okay. I think for a lot of my volunteer stuff, I tend to be in the admin side, right? Get to be a communicator, help create plans and all that stuff. So it's not getting my hands into the direct service part. But there is a place for everybody. So whether you have time, talent, or treasure, you can use your skills to make a difference. And if you make a difference in one person's life, I mean, I think that's been one of the beautiful, I guess that would be what I see most pride in is, although it's still a struggle, like for Learn, Grow, Lead, to make sure the kids have food every day. And we're really struggling to keep the orphanage open because the global economy and the Ukraine war, like sunflower oil, right, is the thing. The Ukraine produces the most sunflower oil, and that's something that's used a lot in developing countries. And if they can't get supplies, then what they do have increases 3-fold, 10-fold, 20-fold. So it makes it much more difficult to be consistent. But I would say, like, being able to know that kids have a place to live when they don't have family they can depend on, that we can become part of their family, and that we can see them get through school, and then, we can see them get jobs. That's really important, because in a lot of countries, there's still a lot of issues with, if you don't have money, it doesn't matter if you went to school. You're not, your other people's parents can bribe the government or bribe a company to give their kid a role or a job. And so we have to figure out, like, what are those ways? And I think that's also where we're going to see the next wave of entrepreneurs, is because people have to figure out, okay, you know what, I can't get a job through these normal ways that other people have access to. So what else can I do?
I love that you're thinking about it creatively and outside of the box. And I mean, you've been doing that your entire career. So being able to then not only do that for your paying jobs, but for your philanthropy and volunteering is tremendous, because you're able to use your skill set to make a difference. And like you said, you may not be getting your hands dirty in the groundswell volunteer work, but your admin work behind the scenes, communicating to other people, like the radio show today, like, is making strides for the work that you're doing. So it's fantastic to see everything that you're doing and everything that you have your hands in doing to make a difference globally. That's fantastic. And like, so inspiring as a change maker. Where can people go to learn more about you, listen to your podcasts, and follow your efforts?
If you want to follow me on socials, you can go to Amplify with Anika, which is Anika. Also, Your Brand Amplified, and yourbrandamplified.com. If you click through, you can click through the podcast. You can click to learn more about me, how to contact me. Full capacity marketing is my day job. A lot of my Your Brand Amplified links will lead you back to that website too. And then you can follow Influencers Foundation and Learn, Grow, Lead to find out more about those charities.
Well, Anika, thank you for all the work that you're doing here in the US and around the globe to inspire people, empower people, and to power the good. Thanks for coming on the show.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me.